you just read those lines again for me, please?
Yes. I can't stand to see those things that you have taken for granted. Thrown away everything you've been handed. Too much all at once. That's how you got so ungrateful. All you saw was the burden.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you know what flashed through my mind as you were reading that the first time? That's why I wanted to hear it again. Was Ian Curtis on the eve of going to America with Joy Division? You know? Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. Hey, look on the left, John. Look on the right, Andy. Well, I was walking down the street on a four-way tab, found a young girl standing under glass. Her heart was black and her face was masked. A $5 bill, that was all she asked. More on that later. But first, we have a track to listen to, selected by brother Andy. Andy, what's in the bag today?
The bag, after I shuffled around a bit and pulled out, it turned out to be a track by a band called Circa Survive. Have you ever heard of a band called Circa Survive?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, interesting. Well, the big fan of theirs. I'd like you to check out this track by them. It's called Imaginary Enemy, and it is a sort of a it's from the Myspace transmission studio, so it's kind of like this live studio performance of the track. So I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about their sound and their track, Imaginary Enemy. So please go off and give it a spin and come back and let us all know what you've made of it.
Will do.
You're so careless, careless. How did you get so ungrateful? You treat me like I'm a disease. Oh, and it's been killing me. Chances are you never even cared at all. I'm sure that you had your reasons, but I'll never get to hear the truth disguised in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so starts off, it's got a nice sort of sound to it, quite a sort of, I think it's got a bit alternative indie rock sound, the two guitars, bass and drums. Um, yeah, and then in comes your man, and the voice doesn't match the exterior. It's like tipping up a bottle of milk and out comes Tabasco. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that voice. And at the start, it was a bit sort of, it's really high register, but it's got a bit of that quality to it. It's almost like a bit helium-y, like at first. Took about 20 seconds or so for my ears to sort of settle in, which is pretty quick, I think. But yeah, it's got a lovely, his voice has got a lovely floating quality to it. And he's got nice control as well, the way he sort of eases into certain things and steps on others. He does already seem to be gurning quite a bit, which sort of puts me off a little bit, only because it kind of betrays, it's like a massive signpost that this is emotional here and this word is important, and I'd rather just hear it rather than see it in his face. I think some people like that performance side of it. Horses for courses, I guess. But yeah, really interesting voice. Okay, let's whiz back just a little bit.
Never even cared at all. I'm sure that you had your reasons, but I'll never get to hear the truth disguised in all your alibis. It's a trick that
I just wrote that down. Yeah. So, I guess that's the chorus, is the way it sort of rose into it. It's interesting. In the chorus, and actually in the verse beforehand, there's the two guitars, are doing similar things at times, but they're never quite doing exactly the same thing. It just made quite an interesting sound, and they did it again in the chorus as they're building up. I have to say as well, the drummer is really peppering in stuff there and sort of giving a bit of sort of pop and fizz to it, or as it sort of rumbles along. I'll whisk this down really quick. Something about tried so hard, be what you needed, imaginary enemy, tried for so long, make you believe that I am not the enemy. Just imaginary. So I'm guessing from that and a couple of the words that I heard in the first verse, I wasn't really paying attention to the words. I was really listening to the sound of his voice and the sounds of the words rather than what they actually were. So I need to pay more attention. But it sounds like it's one of these sort of performance review songs, you can call them, where the relationship, whether it's crisis point or it's ended, but you get the verses which tend to be either narration or evidence, and then the chorus is like stating your case or coming to your conclusions, that it's over because you're a shit, you're a bugger, or you're insert character flaw here, and it's never my fault. I don't know if it's my age, but now I come to almost instinctively question either the veracity or the accuracy of the narrator in these sort of stories. You just think, wow, I wonder what the truth is here. Is he a bit of a twat as well? We'll never know. But it's all very enjoyable. Yeah, interesting. Right. I was about to break down to the next bit, so I wouldn't mind hearing that chorus again. Oh, look at his face. Kind of about the drums. Trying just then to listen to the two guitar parts separately at the same time. I don't have that capacity. But you can hear a little bit of this kind and then this kind, and together they just seem to merge to this really nice sound of togetherness, but they're not playing the same stuff. So it's a proper merging rather than just a mirroring. It sounds really nice, the guitars actually, really nice. It's nodding. Yeah, I was thinking about as the second verse progressed. I was thinking about the music, so I got a few words came through that will seem quite that stung on me. Something about taken for granted and ungrateful and burden and your blessed truths and disguised alibis and every time you say goodbye. So yeah, there's no doubt that he's not a happy chappy. I was thinking about the styles in this. It's quite this sort of alternative rock, indie rock, whatever you want to call it. There is a bit of emo in there, as what I understand now as American emo. Um, Definitely, and there is perhaps a touch of that into his voice as well. Um, there's also something I was thinking before it happened. Actually, there's an element of like heavier sound to it, whether it be like what you call hardcore or whatever. The sort of tinging on metal, and then they went into the bit afterwards after the second chorus, and that was more the rock. Um, and then the sort of really nice solo as well. But you could imagine loads of doing all that at the end of it, which is enjoyable in itself. um, but yeah, this is fun. I mean, think these sort of Venn diagram of all those different styles. Um, Not so hot on the emo, not so hot on the alternatively metal side of it. The indie stroke alternative rock that was predominant three quarters of the song. The guitar wise was really sweet. His voice, I really admire it. I don't know if I could listen to a whole album of it just because it's got that sort of emo, you know, screechy quality to it. It is fine for this song, don't get me wrong. Um, I think it would be a bit much for my tastes to listen to this like 45 minutes of it, but I'm sure there are loads of people that is not a problem. Um, but overall, this is really nice and it's a bit different, which I appreciate. So yeah, I'm a bit intrigued about them and what area of genres they went towards. Or do they gallop through them all and come out the other side playing banjos or whatever? Let's find out by going back and chopping it up with Andy.
All right, so you survived. What did you make of Circa Survive and this track, Imaginary Enemy?
Yeah, I was just thinking this actually that the live studio stuff that we sometimes pick for each other, I think it's a really good way of like, you know, uh, getting to know a band. I think you have to already have known and invested in a band usually to see them live with the audience, because then a lot of
Yeah.
it's about the interplay and stuff. So I think as
Yeah.
an introduction or a first couple of tastes, I think this is a really good way of doing it. So
It's
yeah,
a lovely,
um,
happy little medium, isn't it? Between like just listening to
yeah,
the audio, which is a really good glimpse into it, but also the fun and the atmospheric vibes that you get from a live performance. This is like a nice little in-betweener. So I totally agree with you.
yeah. So starts with the drummer's tropical fish tank view of the band. Um, Perhaps they'll let him out if he's good. We get four quick thumps on the glass, and then we're away. Um, Classic indie stroke alternative guitar riff and a bass with this lovely sort of rasping in between lines as well. I don't know which one of them was making that sound, but it was pleasant. And then your man starts to warble, and it is a surprise. His voice doesn't seem to fit his physical persona. It's like upending a milk bottle and Tabasco comes coming pouring out. Um, Add to the mix that he's a emotional gurner. Do you know what a gurner is?
No, please tell me about this Gurner.
All right, so people who gurn, the activity of gurning is pulling a face,
Oh yeah.
usually with your bottom lip going up over your teeth. And we used to have competitions where for some reason, they would put their head through an old tire and then, and then you would get a prize for the best face puller. So yeah, he's an emotional gurner, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to keep your eyes off him. Let's be fair. Um, However, there's no subtlety in his performance, and after a while, I had to avert my gaze to better appreciate the way he lands certain notes and phrases. because the face was just signposting it too much for me. Now, I mean, some people like that sort of performative, part of it, but for me, it's just, it's a bit too much.
Yeah,
Don't take anything away from it.
John, just to jump in really quickly, because I think you bring up a fair point, but I think, and this is probably he's probably self-taught. I don't know. His name's Anthony Green. I didn't get into the details of how he discovered his voice and honed his craft, but there are certain singers who, because of how they sing and the register that they sing with, there's so much tension held in here. And you can see it, like as he's singing, you can see shit bulging and shit. And I think that forces the face. I agree. It's kind of interesting but tough to look at sometimes. But I don't know if he knows of any other way to create the sounds he's creating without doing that. So yeah, you're right though, completely. He's a Gurner.
There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But on first listen, first time I've heard of this band listening, I wanted to. I'll get into it. So it took about 30 seconds for his voice to settle in my ear. There was a surprise, obviously. But at first, there's almost this impression of a comedic helium sort of way about his voice.
Mm-hmm.
That soon goes, but that's like the first 5 seconds. You get this, it's, not quite Mickey Mouse, but it's, obviously he's got a very high register anyway. And I think he floats from that into falsetto and out again, the borderlands, as it were. But it also is a voice that floats and soars naturally anyway. It's got there's people who've got high voices or strong voices that don't do that, and his does for some reason. So I found it quite captivating. With all that's going on, his physical, presentation as well. But I love the way he stepped on certain words and just accented them. And it's almost like you're bouncing from leaf to leaf or branch to branch with the lightness of a monkey or whatever, or a squirrel or something. But he's just leaning on certain bits and bouncing and sort of skipping across other words. Really, really nice. Really, really nice. So that's why I had to sort of avert my gaze at points, because I wasn't paying enough attention to that. I was really looking at his face too much. And it was around this time that I realized that I wasn't taking in any of the words, just their sounds. So the first words that I actually registered were sort of like, I think the end of the first verse or something. He said the truth disguised or something. So it was time to concentrate. So the next bit, I think, was the chorus, because it was repeated. And from that, I got that this is kind of like a classic accusatory song, and what they tend to do in these songs, I don't think this is any different from the lyrics I did, is the verses tend to pile up the narrative or the evidence.
Yeah.
And then the chorus is usually the closing arguments or the conclusion. And that conclusion can usually be boiled down to "you're a bugger," or variations thereof, insert character flaw here. So I caught a couple of times. So I caught the chorus, and it was like, I tried so hard to be what you needed, your imaginary enemy. I tried for so long to make you believe it, that I am not the enemy. Which I thought was interesting, because it's like a seesaw, that verse, going from one bit to the next within that chorus, sorry. So once a person in the relationship, the other person, as it were, decides that it's quitting time, they can make the other person into the enemy to help them, get to the split. Now, there's doubles or trebles down, usually after the split. They become even more of an enemy. Now, I don't know if it's my age, but my instinct now when I hear this sort of song is to instantly question the veracity or the accuracy or the viewpoint of the narrator in songs like this. If I was hearing this when I was 20, I'd take it for granted. Yeah, he's right. She, he, they, it were absolute twats. But when I hear it now, I think, yeah, I bet you earned some of that yourself,
Yeah.
It's just, the way it goes. The guitars, I realise I've barely spoken about the music here. The guitars go suitably big for the chorus in both cans. And I listened to that the chorus a couple of times, and it goes throughout the whole song, actually, that the guitars quite often, not all the time, but quite often are doing very similar things, but they're not they're not mimicking each other. They're never the same output. So it's a really interesting sound, and at points it's complementary. At other points, it actually meshes into one thing. And I think particularly the second time I listened to the chorus, that happened. So you can't really listen to them separately. And I don't have the mental wherewithal to listen to two parts once differently in each ear and discern each little bit, you know. But it's just really nicely done, actually. And it's not, it's similar, but not the same to, like, you know, television or the, you know, Dream Syndicate or whatever, who mesh guitars. It's a different way of doing it. It was just more subtle. Really, really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting sound. Throughout the chorus, the singer opens up and extends even more the notes, as you'd expect. We've talked about that before. And the drummer adds some really nice fills as well. And it's like audio fireworks to the refrain, you know. So we drop back into the second verse. And while pondering the music, I catch some more words, more evidence, Your Honor. He says words like slipshod, right at the start, I think that was, taken for granted, ungrateful, burden, your blessed truths, disguise, something alibis, and every time you say goodbye. So yeah, it's adding up to what I think it would be. But I was thinking about the sound of the music as well. And there's quite a, again, it's subtle, but there is a melange of styles. So it's definitely noughties or beyond, you know, mid noughties or beyond, I'd say. So there's some alt rock in there. There's some indie rock as well. There's some, as I now come to understand it from you, some USA emo, and they're not quite as heavy or muscular as someone like Oh Brother, but there's also a tinge of something heavy underneath this. That's what I was thinking at the time. So the chorus comes around again, and then they exit out with some head nodding, and the sound does become more sort of rock like. There's a little bit where he does some vocalizing, and it's very short, 10 seconds, but he vocalizes and the drums are hitting. And that little 10 seconds was my favorite bit of the whole song. It just soared, and it was almost like a Tom York like in a way. Really, really nice, beautiful. I'd not say his vocals weren't, you know, really good all the way throughout, but that little bit just hit some sweet spot with me that I just loved. So yeah, it goes to the next section, and quick as a flash, the guitarist with insert make and model here, please, Andy, slaps on a capo for a solo, which would traditionally be greeted by a veritable sea of signs of the horn. I did also like how he threw the capo aside without missing a beat as the camera sort of goes back to the fish tank to view. It was just enough time to slip in another round of the chorus, and then it was over. So yeah, I would say it was interesting, and the things that I thought would happen did happen for the most part. There's that blurring of lines between sort of indie rock, alt rock into sort of hardcore metal, blah blah blah, which I think American audience are a lot more comfortable with than this side of the pond, and I am a reflection of this side of the pond. So the sort of going towards the more rockier side is not as much my thing. I don't say I didn't enjoy it, because I certainly did, but I found this really interesting, really enjoyable. The sort of that emo-y side of things wasn't totally, like, the perspective wasn't totally my bag, but again, enough for me to enjoy it. And I always forget to point out that as a live performance, this is absolutely spotless. Nailed it. So yeah, really good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. There is a, as you put it, a melange of sounds going on here, and they're not too far from each other, so you really have to like listen to discern the genre bending or hopping that's going on here. But indie rock, alternative rock, post-hardcore American music is in this as well as some subtle and not, thankfully, ham-fisted doffs of the cap to like some emo-y type stuff as well. So yeah, it really, I'm glad you caught on to all of that. I'm really glad you liked the live sort of studio aspect of it all, so you could see all of the you know, the sausage making happening in real time, and appreciate that it was done flawlessly. I mean, they nailed this performance in this song. for this Transmissions studio performance. So yeah, glad you liked it, John. Circa Survive, they are an American rock band from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that formed in 2004. The band consists of the aforementioned Anthony Green on lead vocals, Colin Frangicetto on rhythm guitar and backing vocals, Brendan Ekstrom on lead guitar, Nick Beard on bass and backing vocals, and Steve Clifford on drums and percussions. So vocalist Anthony Green left the band Seosin in 2004. Later noting the big thing that I was just scared, and I was scared of committing to that band. And it's interesting because that band was literally kind of on the cusp of garnering some real attention. They were getting a lot of stuff written about them. There was a lot of anticipation for their music to come out. And then Green just folded and walked away from the whole thing. So yes, he does have this issue, which I'm sure pissed off a lot of his bandmates and probably potential, record execs and things like that. So later, Green met up with Colin Frangicetto, a friend with whom he had jammed in the past, and they decided to begin recording and recruiting. Thus, Circa Survive was born. I guess despite his fear of commitment, that wasn't enough to drive away Colin Frangicetto on, the idea of starting up a band with Anthony Green. So Frangicetto and Green, with full support from Equal Vision Records, then recruited Brandon Ekstrom. Ekstrom had been Frangicetto's bandmate in This Day Forward, which had also recently disbanded. Both Ekstrom and Frangicetto had toured with Taken during their This Day Forward days, and procured Nick Beard, the previous bass guitarist for the band Taken, as Circa Survive's next member. The band met Stephen Clifford through Vadim Tever of the band Marigold, and also from This Day Forward. Steve jammed with us for a week, and from there it was on, said Frangicetto. Circa Survive's first release was the EP The Inuit Sessions, and it was released on March 18th, 2005. It contained 4 tracks: Act Appalled, Handshakes at Sunrise, The Great Golden Baby, and Suspending Disbelief. Circa Survive quickly made a name for themselves in the indie music scene in a little over 2 years with their 2005 debut album, Juturna, and their second album, On Letting Go, which was released in 2007. Both albums were released on the aforementioned Equal Vision Records. Their third album, Blue Sky Noise, was released via Atlantic Records in 2010. And after parting ways with Atlantic Records, the band's fourth album, Violent Waves, was released independently in 2012. And their fifth album, Dissensus, was released by Sumerian Records in 2014, and their sixth, The Amulet, was released with Hopeless Records in October of 2017. The band would follow with 2 EPs on Rise Records, A Dream About Love in October 2021, and A Dream About Death, the follow-up, in February of 2022. According to lead singer Anthony Green, Circa Survive has been influenced by bands like The Deftones, Thrice, Paul Simon, Dredge, and Bjork, which, speaking of melanges, that's a very interesting one of influences, all from very different backgrounds. Green also cites Nirvana as a major influence, with Circa Survive frequently performing covers of Nirvana songs. Throughout their music, which, just thinking about his voice delivering some of Cobain's stuff is really interesting to think about. So throughout their musical career, but particularly with respect to their album Juturna, the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has been a large influence on Circa Survive as well. The album's hidden track is based on Mark Z. Danilevsky's novel House of Leaves, lending it an unofficial title. The track that I had you listen to and watch the performance of, Imaginary Enemy, was featured on their third album, the aforementioned Blue Sky Noise. After supporting Thrice and Pelican for their spring 2008 tour, Circa Survive returned to Philly to write for the then untitled third album. A short leg of shows in the eastern U.S. occurred in late 2008, and 4 shows were played in Southern California in February of 2009. After that, the band did not tour again until the tentatively planned headlining tour for their forthcoming third album. Anthony Green's growth as a guitarist played a major role in Blue Sky Noise, which the band framed as an entirely new chapter. On August 3rd, Circa Survive stated that they had begun recording their third album in Toronto and had chosen David Bottrill as the producer. They also stated, after completing our contract with Equal Vision, we embarked on a large search for our next home. We met with lots of labels and decided that Atlantic Records is the best place for us to continue our growth as a band and to help us release our music around the world. On February 16th, 2010, they announced their new album would be titled Blue Sky Noise and would be released on April 20th, 2010. The album entered the Billboard 200 at number 11, the band's highest position. This album marks a change in stylistic direction as it deviates from the band's previous blend of post-hardcore and progressive rock toward a more refined indie rock influenced sound. You clearly picked up on that, though they didn't lose some subtle allusions to what was more of their meat and potatoes of their sound, which is sort of that post-hardcore kind of sound. In July and August of 2010, the band went on to on a U.S. tour to promote the album with the support of the Deer Hunter, Oh Brother, and Coheed and Cambria. So when you said Oh Brother, I kind of lit up there. So yeah. On October 18th, 2010, Myspace Transmissions released a live EP of the band playing 5 tracks from Blue Sky Noise, as well as a cover of the Nirvana song Scentless Apprentice. And as you probably and rightly surmised, this video we scoped out today was from that very same session. The album was ranked number 9 on MySpace.com's top 50 albums of 2010, and over at Metacritic, the album stands at an aggregate score of 83 out of 100. Staff member over at Sputnik Music, Channing Freeman, scored the album a 4.5 out of 5 and wrote, "For anyone who thought that Blue Sky Noise would end up being more of the same from Circa Survive, think again. Those who previously considered them boring in the past might want to consider checking this album out. The entirety of Blue Sky Noise blows away anything else that Circa Survive has ever done. It is immense, it is challenging, and it will make fools out of those who doubt it." Meanwhile, Nathan Faulkner of WordPress also praised the album as the band's best work, writing, "Circa Survive is mostly known for their vocalist Anthony Green, but behind every great singer is a great band, and Circa has never been an exception. But with this album, I see much more. It seems every one of the members poured their best into this CD. There is incredible guitar work from both Colin Frangicetto and Brendan Ekstrom, backed by the amazing drives of Nick Beard and his bass, and leading lines powered by Steve Clifford's great drum work. Every band member is pulling weight like no other." Jordan Bloom of Rebel Noise wrote of the album, "Virtually every track here sounds clearer and fuller, with almost all of them warranting special attention. For instance, Strange Terrain kicks things off with a superb blend of infectious melodies, silky smooth vocal counterpoints, and perfectly punchy instrumentation and eccentric production. From there, I Felt Free, Frozen Creek, and Through the Desert Alone hold up as delightfully catchy, sundry, and moving ballads. Imaginary Enemy is exceptionally dynamic and stirring, with a relatively involved verse structure, and Spirit of the Stairwell is almost folky in its use of downtrodden sentiments, acoustic guitar strums, and dejected piano chords. Of course, selections like Get Out, Glass Arrows, and The Longest Mile find them indulging in their trickier and fiercer tendencies. In general, Blue Sky Noise finds Circa Survive at their most dignified, steady, and well-balanced in terms of combining heartfelt songwriting and ambitiously wide-ranging instrumentation." So, you caught some of these, but let's dig into these lyrics, shall we? "You're so careless, careless. How did you get so ungrateful? You treat me like I'm a disease, and it's been killing me. Chances are you never even cared at all. I'm sure you had your reasons, but I'll never get to hear the truth disguised in all your alibis. It's a tradition, practiced, every time you say goodbye. I've tried so hard to be what you needed, your imaginary enemy. I've tried for so long to make you believe it, that I am not the enemy. Slipshod cavalier, I can't stand to see those things that you've taken for granted, thrown away everything you've been handed. Too much all at once. That's how you got so ungrateful. All you saw was the burden, standing beside all your blessed truths, disguised in all your alibis. It's a tradition practiced every time you say goodbye. I've tried so hard to be what you needed, your imaginary enemy. I've tried for so long to make you believe it, that I am not the enemy, imaginary enemy. So yeah, lyrically, Blue Sky Noise is based on Green's struggles with mental illness, with many of the lyrics written during his voluntary 3-week stay in a mental health facility. Given that context, it likely comes as little surprise that this track explores the theme of internal struggles, self-doubt, personified as an imaginary adversary. The lyrics delve into the complexities of the human mind, highlighting how negative thoughts and insecurities can manifest as an internal enemy, hindering personal growth and happiness. The band announced an indefinite hiatus in October 2022. Anthony Green would later confirm a permanent disbandment in May of 2025 by responding yes to a now deleted Threads post asking if Circa was over. So it would appear that the band is unfortunately no more, which is a shame for their fans, myself included. You know, given what I told you about how Seosin came to an abrupt end right as they were about to kind of reach their what you would think their aspirations would be, right? These lyrics really stand out to me. You know, you can't see those things that you've taken for granted, thrown away everything you've been handed, too much all at once. That's how you got so ungrateful. All you saw was the burden. So yeah, I think that little snippet of lyrics could actually underscore what he was going through when he realized he was faced with potential success while struggling internally with the feeling of apprehension, or maybe this feeling that he didn't deserve it or it wasn't warranted, and he became afraid and ran.
Can you just read those lines again for me, please?
Yes. I can't stand to see those things that you have taken for granted, thrown away everything you've been handed, too much all at once. That's how you got so ungrateful. All you saw was the burden.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you know what flashed through my mind as you were reading that the first time? I saw I wanted to hear it again. Was Ian Curtis on the eve of going to America with Joy Division? You know, I
Yeah.
wonder if those are the sort of went through his head.
Yeah,
Could
like
I don't know, but could be.
yeah. Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
bit. There's a mixture of like imposter syndrome and other stuff as well, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. Do I deserve this? Do I not? And the enemy is that
Yeah.
self-doubt that lives inside your head, and it creates this kind of duality within yourself that are at odds with one another. And this could easily, and I'm sure for all the sect of their fans that do relate more to that emo stuff, probably saw like, oh, that's my stepdad, or that's my ex, and all this stuff. But really, I think from Green's perspective, it was his internal struggle,
Yeah.
manifesting in this imaginary enemy.
And I guess it's a cousin of the other side, which is this huge self-confidence and ambition that a lot of artists have to make
Yeah.
them go forward. So you've got it's the other side of the coin, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah,
Interesting.
and
Interesting.
it is interesting, and I think there are, outside of Curtis and Green, there are probably plenty of people that were like would
Oh, yeah.
strut into the studio with all the confidence of an excellent songwriter or performer, but then when tasked with promoting what they've created, that's when the apprehension, the cold feet, the trepidation set in, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to," this is kind of when the rubber meets the road. I think that's when they get cold feet and are like, "No, I don't want any part of this." So yeah, interesting stuff. An interesting, narrative about the internal struggles one goes through with fame or success, and like you said, the idea of being an imposter. Do you really deserve it? So yeah, I've always really, really gravitated toward this song. I love it a lot. I'm glad I could finally get it on the channel and get you to check them out. And I appreciate you being able to kind of like go through with a fine-tooth comb and pick out these very close but subtly different genres that they kind of put together in this track and kind of in their sound in general, particularly on this album. So thanks for giving it a go, John. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
Got
yeah, I enjoyed it.
Great. Guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track and what you think of the band, Circa Survive, the track being Imaginary Enemy. Love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments field below if it reminded you of anything, if you're a fan of these guys and there's other tracks, whether it's from this album or any of their other works that we should check out on the channel. Please feel free to shout it out. I'm pretty familiar with these guys, but I'm sure, as John mentioned, he's not. So if you have any suggestions, we can add it to our ongoing list, and John can check it out in some future Friday episode. All that out of the way, please like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any of all of those things. We really do appreciate it. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.